Welcome to Video 2, Early Singapore, the story of Temasek. Most people think Singapore's history begins in 1809, when Stamford Raffles arrived. But that is not quite right. Long before Raffles, long before the British, there was a settlement on this island called Temasek. In this video, we are going to find out what Temasek was, why it mattered, why it rose, and why it eventually declined. And by the end, you will understand something important. Singapore was already part of a much larger world long before it became the city we know today. This video is for Singapore Secondary 1 students studying early Singapore. Whether you are preparing for a test or just trying to understand what actually happened here before 1819, this video has what you need. By the time we finish, you will be able to explain Singapore's role in regional trade networks, describe why Temasek rose and why it declined, use specific evidence to support your historical claims, and connect Temasek to a much longer story of Singapore's history. Let's get into it. Here is what we will cover. We start with Singapore in regional trade at 130, then the rise of Temasek at 4, then the evidence that proves early Singapore was real at 7, then the decline of Temasek at 930, the historical meaning of Temasek at 1130, and we close with practice and recap at 13. Use these timestamps to jump to any section you need to revisit. Now let's begin. Long before 1819, Singapore was not isolated. It was already connected to one of the most important trade networks in the world. This network linked Southeast Asian sea routes with India and China, and it carried an enormous range of goods: spices, silk, porcelain, gold, tin, cloth, ceramics. Ships from India would sail east toward China. Ships from China would sail west toward India and beyond. And all of them had to pass through the same region, the seas between the Malay Peninsula and Sumatra. Singapore sat right in the middle of all of this. It was not a backwater, it was a node in a much larger trading world. One of the key concepts you need to understand is port of call. A port of call is a place where ships stop along a voyage, not to stay permanently, just to stop, to take on fresh water, to restock food supplies, to rest the crew, to carry out small repairs, and while they were there, to trade. This was absolutely essential for long sea journeys. Ships could not carry unlimited supplies. They needed reliable places to stop along the way. And Singapore's position along the busiest sea corridor in the region, the Strait of Melaka, which connects the Indian Ocean to the South China Sea, made it a natural stopping point for ships sailing between India and China. Without ports of call, long voyages were simply too dangerous to complete. The key phrase here is strategic location. Strategic location means a place has advantages because of where it is. And Singapore's location had enormous advantages. It sits at the southern tip of the Malay Peninsula, right at the entrance to the Strait of Malaka. The Strait of Malaka is one of the most important waterways in the world. It is the main sea passage between the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea. Every ship trading between east and west had to pass through or near this strait. Singapore was sitting right at the crossroads. That is not luck, that is geography. And that geography has shaped Singapore's history from ancient times right up to today. So why did Temasek specifically rise as an important place? The first reason is its geographical advantages, and there are two that matter most. The first is sheltered waters. Singapore's harbor had calm seas, protected from the open ocean. When you are a merchant sailor and your ship is loaded with precious cargo, you do not want rough water. You want somewhere calm where you can safely sail in, anchor, and trade. The second advantage is good anchorage. Good anchorage means the seabed is firm enough for ships to drop anchor safely without drifting. It also means multiple ships can anchor at the same time. These two physical features, sheltered waters and good anchorage, made Temasek a safe and reliable port. And safe, reliable ports attract traders. The second major reason Temasek rose was external conditions. things that happened outside Singapore that changed the region around it. The most important of these was the fall of Srivijaya. Srivijaya was a powerful maritime empire that had dominated regional trade for centuries. It controlled the sea routes and the most important ports in the region. But Srivijaya eventually weakened and collapsed. When that happened, the regional trade network lost its center. Trade routes that had flowed through Srivijaya's ports now needed somewhere else to go. New opportunities opened up, and Temasek, with its geographical advantages, was well placed to benefit. This is what historians call external conditions, events outside Singapore that shaped what happened here. Always think about the wider regional and global context, not just what was happening on the island itself. How do historians actually know that Temasek existed and was active? They use evidence. And for early Singapore, that evidence comes in two main forms: written records and archaeological finds. Written records are accounts that people wrote down. For Temasek, we have Chinese records from the 13th century that mention a settlement called Dan Maxi, which historians connect to Temasek. We have the Malay annals, which describe early rulers and events connected to the Singapore area. And we have Portuguese accounts from the 1500s that refer to Singapore as a known location on sea routes. These written records show that Temasek was known to traders, travelers, and rulers across a very wide area. It was not a secret. It was not a legend. It was a real, named place that appeared in multiple records from multiple countries. One of the most important pieces of physical evidence for early Singapore is the Singapore Stone. The Singapore Stone was a large sandstone slab found at the mouth of the Singapore River, right where ships would have entered the harbor. It was covered in an inscription, text carved directly into the stone. Here is something interesting. The script on the Singapore Stone has never been fully deciphered. Historians have not been able to completely read what it says. But that does not reduce its importance. What it proves is that someone was here, and they were literate and organized enough to carve a formal inscription on a large stone and place it at the entrance to the harbor. That is not the mark of a deserted island. That is the mark of an active, established settlement. The Singapore Stone is physical proof that Temasek was real. Now let's look at why Temasek declined. The most important reason is the rise of Melaka. Melaka was founded around the early 1400s, and it grew very quickly into one of the most powerful trading ports in the region. It offered traders something extremely valuable: strong political protection. A Malay ruler actively invited merchants from across Asia to come and trade there, guaranteed their safety, and created excellent port facilities. Traders from China, India, Arabia, and Southeast Asia all flocked to Melaka. And when they did, they stopped needing to stop at Temasek. The trade that had once passed through Temasek now flowed directly to Melaka. Without traders stopping and spending money, Temasek lost its role as a significant port. This is causation in action. The rise of Melaka caused the decline of Temasek by diverting the trade that Temasek depended on. Political change also played a role in Temasek's decline. As regional powers competed for control of trade routes and ports, Temasek found itself caught in the middle. Johor eventually emerged as the dominant power in the area around Singapore, and the island came under the influence of larger kingdoms and sultanates. That reduced Temasek's political independence and stability. And stability matters enormously for trade. Merchants and traders are very practical people. They want to go somewhere safe, somewhere with predictable rules and reliable protection. If a port is politically unstable, if there is conflict, shifting rulers, or uncertain authority, traders will choose somewhere else. The combination of Melaka's rise drawing trade away and political instability making Temasek less attractive meant that by the 1400s, Temasek had lost most of its importance as a regional trading port. Let's pause here and think through what we have covered so far. I want you to answer 3 questions. First, give 2 reasons why Temasek rose as a trading settlement. Second, give 2 reasons why Temasek declined. And third, this is the thinking question. Which reason do you think was more important for Temasek's decline, the rise of Melaka or political change, and why? There is no single correct answer to the third question. What matters is that you make a choice and explain your reasoning with evidence. Pause the video now, think through your answers, then unpause when you are ready. Here are the model answers. Temasek rose because of its geographical advantages, the sheltered waters and good anchorage, which made it a safe and reliable port. And it rose because of external conditions, specifically the fall of Srivijaya, which created new trade opportunities that Temasek was well placed to take advantage of. Temasek declined because of the rise of Melaka. Trade shifted to a new, more powerful regional port. And it declined because of political change. Instability made Temasek less attractive to traders who needed security. For the thinking question, the honest answer is that both reasons were connected. Melaka's rise pulled trade away, and political instability in Temasek pushed traders to look elsewhere. When you explain an event's decline in your exam, always check whether your causes reinforce each other, because they usually do. Now let's think about why Temasek matters beyond just being an interesting story. Temasek was an early name for Singapore. And what that tells us is something genuinely important. Singapore existed as a named, known settlement long before Raffles arrived in 1819. The island had a name. It had rulers. It had a role in regional trade that stretched across centuries. For historical thinking, this is an example of continuity. The island and its location were always there, always strategically valuable, always part of the wider maritime world. 1819 was not the birth of Singapore. It was a turning point in a much longer story. When you study Singapore's history, that longer story matters. It changes how you understand what 1819 actually meant. Temasek also connects Singapore to a much wider world. Singapore was part of the Malay maritime world, linked to Malay kingdoms through trade, culture, language, and political networks. It was not an isolated outpost. It was part of a civilization that spanned the seas of Southeast Asia. And beyond the Malay world, Temasek was connected to the Indian Ocean Trade Network and the South China Sea Network. Goods and people passed through this region from as far away as Arabia, Persia, India, and China. This regional connection, this deep embeddedness in a larger maritime world, is one of the most important things to understand about Singapore. The reason Singapore's location has always mattered is not coincidence. It is geography meeting trade routes, meeting history, and it has been true for at least 700 years. Let me show you how to turn this knowledge into a strong exam answer. If an exam question asks, explain why Temasek rose as an important trading settlement, here is the structure to use. First, give a reason, the cause. Second, explain how that reason helped Temasek rise, the link. Third, use specific details as evidence. Here is a worked example. One reason Temasek rose was its geographical advantages. It had sheltered waters and good anchorage, which made it a safe stopping point for ships. This attracted traders who needed a reliable place to rest, resupply, and trade their goods. Notice how this answer does not just name the cause, sheltered waters, but explains the link between that cause and Temasek's rise as a port. That link is what exam markers are looking for. Here is the same structure applied to a decline question. If the exam asks, explain why Temasek declined, here is how to answer. One reason Temasek declined was the rise of Melaka. Melaka offered traders better protection and facilities, so trade shifted away from Temasek. Without traders stopping here, Temasek lost its role as an important regional port. Three things in that answer: the cause, Melaka's rise; the link, trade shifted; the result, Temasek lost its role. And notice the exam tip at the bottom of this slide. Do not just name the cause. Always explain what happened to Temasek as a result of that cause. The examiner wants to see that you understand the connection, not just that you can remember the name Melaka. Time for a quick knowledge check. I have 6 fill-in-the-blank sentences for you. Pause the video and try to complete each one from memory. 1. Singapore was part of blank networks that linked Southeast Asia, India, and China. 2. Ships stopped at Singapore because it was a blank of call along the sea routes. 3. Temasek had sheltered waters and good blank, which attracted ships. 4. The fall of blank helped Temasek rise by shifting trade opportunities in the region. 5. Temasek declined when trade shifted to blank. 6. The Singapore blank is evidence that Temasek was a real and active settlement. Pause now, try to fill in all 6 from memory, then unpause to check. Here are the answers. 1. Trade. 2. Port. 3. Anchorage. 4. Srivijaya. 5. Melaka. 6. Stone. The Singapore stone. If you got all 6, your Temasek facts are solid. If you missed any, especially Srivijaya or the Singapore stone, go back and rewatch those sections before your next test. These are exactly the kinds of specific details that come up in exam questions about early Singapore. A vague answer like trade shifted is not enough. Being able to name Srivijaya and explain why its fall mattered is what separates a good answer from a great one. Let's close with a recap of everything we covered. Singapore was part of regional trade networks connecting Southeast Asia, India, and China. It served as a port of call because of its strategic location at the entrance to the Strait of Malacca. Temasek rose because of its geographical advantages, sheltered waters and good anchorage, and because the fall of Srivijaya created new opportunities. We know Temasek was real because of written records, including Chinese accounts, the Malay annals, and Portuguese records, and because of physical evidence like the Singapore stone. Temasek declined because trade shifted to Malacca and because political change made the island less stable and less attractive. And Temasek matters because it proves Singapore's history is older and richer than 1819 alone, connected to the Malay world and to a wide maritime trade network that stretched across the entire region. Before you go, here is what to do next. Complete your guided notes. The fill-in-the-blank sheet is linked in the description below. Then try the practice quiz, which has 10 questions on everything we covered. And fill in your exit ticket. Just 2 to 4 sentences answering the 4 prompts about Temasek's rise, evidence, decline, and historical meaning. All of these resources are free and linked below the video. If this video helped you understand early Singapore and Temasek, please like it so more Sec 1 students can find it. Subscribe for weekly Sec 1 history videos, and leave a comment. What surprised you most about Singapore before 1890? I will see you in video 3, where we look at how Singapore became a British trading post. See you there. No voiceover. YouTube end screen with soft background music at 10 to 15% volume. End screen displays links to Video 1, History Basics, and Video 3, How Singapore Became a British Trading Post, with the subscribe button.